is Matt Jacobson. I am the Online Learning Coordinator for the Learning Technology Center of Illinois. I'd like to remind everyone that we are recording this webinar today. All recordings will be posted on YouTube within 24 to 48 hours of the close of this event. So you can check us out on YouTube. I'll probably get to it within a day or so. If you do have any questions today, please feel free to type those questions in the chat. Again, make sure that blue button with the little drop-down menu in the chat reads everyone and not just host and panelists, so that we can all read your questions and benefit from the answers. I will also be monitoring the Q&A panel, and you can also use the hand raise feature. Any one of those three methods will let us know that you have any questions, and we'll allow some time for questions later on in the webinar. For those of you who are joining us live today, you will be eligible for professional development credit here in Illinois. We will send out a link to evaluate the session also within 24 to 48 hours. You'll need to complete and submit that evaluation in order to earn your PD credit. So today we are joined by two of our colleagues, Stacie Tefft and Brian Krause. And Stacie and Brian will be sharing some ideas on developing and using choice boards in your classroom situation. So without further ado from me, Brian, Stacie, I think you have the ability to share your screen. Go ahead and unmute yourself and you can take it away.
Well, Brian's sharing the screen. I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Stacie Tefft. I am an instructional technology coach in Southern Illinois. Prior to this, I was high school, middle school teacher, and social studies in ELA. So that's kind of my background.
There we go, all configured. Hi, my name is Brian Krause. I am up in the Rockford area as an instructional technology coach. And yes, prior to being an instructional technology coach, I taught 8th grade ELA, which some people find to be challenging because apparently middle schoolers are, I don't know, ornery sometimes. I don't get it. I think they're fun, but that's just me. So welcome. If Matt hasn't already, he'll toss the slides in the chat. But if you actually want to join the bit.ly up at the top left-hand corner of the page, you can find it right in there. That's bit.ly/C choice and then LTC. And you can find our slides right in there. And that'll be up in the top left for the entirety of the presentation in case you need it. So like I said, Stacie Tefft, Brian Krause, we're both instructional technology coaches here in the LTC. And then if you see that little B or if you see that little S there, that's going to let us know who's speaking at that time. And we are both coaches, first-year coaches with the instructional technology coaching program with the LTC. And I've loved working with our districts up to this point. I mean, not that it was bad, but you know, it's enjoyable. It's a great job. All right, so choice boards. Probably a lot of people know what they are, but are you tired of the same old assessments? Are you looking for a student agency? I'm not selling a used car. Are you needing some back pocket sub plans, or are you tired of hearing your own voice? Because as a middle school teacher, that's definitely something that they were always tired to hear. I'm sure that Stacie can say the same thing as a former high school teacher. They sometimes don't hear it. Come on along with us. So choice boards, for those that are unfamiliar with choice boards, it's been around for quite a while, but it's a learning activity board or menu that allows students to choose basically how they're going to show their learning or how they can be assessed for. And so it really gives a lot of that voice and choice that we really want as teachers, and allowing students to feel empowered to say, this is what I know, and this is how I want to show how I know. And so it can be used pretty much in any form or facet, whether asynchronous or synchronous. We know we're all flipping back and forth in and out of the classroom with remote closures and whatnot. But it can also be used in the classroom very easily as well to allow for that. And so if Chuck Norris says it's a great choice, I think it's a good choice as well.
Okay, so choice boards have a lot of definite benefits. I started using choice boards back prior to when my districts had technology, and they kind of started as matrices. I've always been a big proponent of student choice, building on their strengths and then allowing them a comfort zone to build on their weaknesses. One of my favorite parts is it teaches the kids responsibility. It shifts the learning and the assessment knowledge and their choices to the student instead of the teacher. So I always like that component. Engagement definitely gets increased. And I like building on their strengths. If I'm assessing a skill that's not necessarily part of the content, I like that students could choose their strength to demonstrate that skill. So we're not looking at other deficits intruding on that skill. It also requires the analysis of material. It's a higher level complex thinking depending on how you set them up. That's the other thing with them, is they can be very simple to very complex. It requires a bunch of backwards planning for these to be effective. And it gives the students ownership and a much deeper connection to the content because they're choosing what aspects of the content they want to engage with. So those are some of my basics with why I chose them. Okay, when you can use them as an introduction. You can use them as an attention getter, a differentiation tool. One of my specialties, especially with incorporating technology, has been to differentiate learning and assessment with technology. Choice boards are the perfect tool for that. You can allow them to be one choice board for the whole class. You can adapt them for different students without the other students knowing. That was one of my big things that I absolutely loved, especially when we went remote. You can use them as an instructional tool where the students can choose how they learn. So throughout kind of running in the background, like we would do our normal classroom things, but then running in the background, they had these choice boards for how they wanted to be retaught, how they wanted to relearn, how they wanted to demonstrate their learning for that day's lesson. So it can be used in that aspect. A collaboration tool, especially the older the kids get. And with, like I said, I was middle school and high school. I love watching the students work together and build off each other's strengths because they generally tend to choose to work with somebody who has different strengths than they do. So that collaboration is allowing them to learn from somebody who may think the same and be interested in the same things, but have different strengths which allows both students to grow. Introduction, we kind of touched on this. I went out of order. So they can kind of get their brains warmed up. It could be short activities. These don't have to be huge, massive choice boards. They can be a choice of one or two things as a bell ringer. So there's a lot of different aspects to use this. And then assessment. A lot of times we think of these as just an assessment tool to where you're getting an end product and the students choosing that, which it is great that way. And that can be built into a whole choice board. But these other tools are kind of the lesser known way of using them.
All right, so using choice boards in the classroom, there's some things you want to go about in regards to creating them and how you use them. And so a lot of the ones that we'll actually show towards the end have some of these creation options of how you want to score them, so to speak. And so one of the most popular ones is the tic-tac-toe. We all love a game of tic-tac-toe. And then obviously right in the center is where everyone wants to start at. And so sometimes that might be a free choice, or it might be that one aspect that you definitely want to hit in a choice board. It could be a menu of options. Sometimes people, I don't like doing it right after lunch or before lunch because I like to think about lunch, but you get a menu of certain things that you want to be able to have students choose from. Or points reached, whether it be having a lot of points in a task that might be a little bit more difficult, more rigorous, and then maybe something smaller in a task that might be easier for them to complete or quicker for them to complete. Accountability. One of the biggest words that we use with students, especially, is that they can keep track of their own work, or they can keep track of somebody else's work. I know a lot of teachers that use accountability partners when using choice boards. Like Stacie said earlier, having those like-minded people who are able to build off one another's thoughts is great for that use of collaboration, and that they can keep each other on track. And then, you know, the popular buzzword LMS, whether that be Google Classroom, Schoology, Canvas. You can even use Seesaw for a choice board for tracking, or think about that blending of good old paper and pencil to be able to mark in what they've done or what they've completed. And the last kind of is, when do you want to use them? It can be used a lot of different times. It can be used as a summative assessment. That's probably one of the most popular ways that people use choice boards, is as an end of unit assessment. One of my favorite ways in the classroom is when I had a sub. If I knew I would be out for something and I could provide a choice board, not only could I provide rigorous instruction that's keeping students on track with where we're at, rather than throwing some worksheets or something hobbled together, I had a choice board that was ready to go. That students were able to then hear my voice in the choice board, complete those activities, and stay on track with the curriculum without having to have a sub instruct in there. And then also another popular one is early finishers, whether that be for students having a selection of choices that they can do once they're finished in your class, so that you can keep the learning going without having, you know, cool math games being the thing that you default to.
I think one of the things on this too that has come about recently with my teachers down here, we have a lot of students being quarantined right now. And so they're having a hard time adapting what they're doing in class to the same things happening when the kids are at home. So one thing they are going to is choice boards for those 5 to 7 day kids that are out. For the ones who have technology, they are doing electronic, but they are also sending paper versions home, just to kind of let the students figure out how they can learn at home, because we're not synchronous. So that's another way, I think, in recent times that we're really looking at using choice board in the survival aspect of where we are.
All right, so like Stacie said, we're kind of in those uncharted waters still. We're still going forward. It's kind of takes some time to start something new. Although choice boards aren't as daunting as they might seem, it's, you know, take time to go through those learning expectations with the students, especially if you know that there's potential for an e-learning day coming up, whether that be because of snow closure or because of a COVID quarantine. Take that time, make sure that they know exactly what they're doing. If you need to put those explanations into the directions, just so that they're 100% clear on what they're doing. Being transparent. That's one of the greatest things about choice boards, is that you can't really complain a whole lot when they tell you what you're doing for your assessment. The transparency with students is a great thing to be able to say, like, this is how you're getting graded and how you're being scored. Be okay that there might be an easy square. We all kind of have an easy square that is there for us. Something that's a little more comfortable for them to get that barrier of access over for them, so that they're able to get in a little bit easier for them. And then, you know what, be present while they're doing this. A lot of times when you're doing choice boards in person, you can use something like a Chromebook monitoring of GoGuardian or Lightspeed to assist basically as they're going along. You see a student stuck on a certain task, give them that quick little nudge that you see how they're going through in there. But also nothing replaces you being the teacher in the classroom, be able to assist with those tasks as well. And so we've got a lot of greats in here, from Bill Murray to Chuck Norris telling us he should use choice boards. So there's kind of a ton of tools that you can use for choice boards. I mean, it's really endless. I mean, you can plug and play with any certain type of tool that you'd like to. But here are some that we kind of curated together that we've used in the past. It might be more for your subject specific. I know Stacie, being a former history teacher and economics teacher, really kind of blended using a lot of things such as history.com and a lot of other robust resources from her curriculum. But we're going to get kind of some of those general broad strokes tools. And so top left, probably one of our favorite tools as instructional tech coaches is Screencastify in Loom. Showing our screen is one of the greatest ways to show somebody how to do something. But students can also use that for themselves. Those are two programs that are used widely in Chromebooks. They can actually record directly on their screens as well, to be able to use that as they're recording to show that they're doing something. Flipgrid, I always had fun with this one, but students can absolutely have a square on their choice board, menu item, their choice board, where they're sharing their learning verbally and being able to illustrate it differently rather than having to write something into a document, or using it as a way that they can collaborate back and forth in a community rather than just being in a static document. The Google Workspace is obviously something that lends itself well, but creating a quick organizer in drawings, writing a poem in Docs, creating a journey in Google My Maps. There's a ton of stuff that you could use to be able to have choices within your choice board. And then we get to everyone's favorite in the classroom. Good old quizzes, Blooket, and Kahoot. I think that's about what every kid clamors for. But you can also, if your district has a SAPA agreement for students to be able to create their student accounts, they can create their own quizzes. They can create their own Kahoots that they can challenge their friends in, as well as one of those choices in the choice board. So something that also shows the learning while at the same time keeps them engaged. And the last two boxes right in there, Book Creator is a really, really popular one. It is a kind of larger task. If you haven't checked out Book Creator, I suggest you check out Book Creator. It's a really, really cool thing that basically students can create their own storybooks with embedded voiceovers and cool elements that might take a little bit more time to do something in a Google Slides, but allows them to read like a storybook for them to show their things in there. And then a lot of schools are using things like iExcel, MobiMax, and Freckle as those supplemental lessons that you could also assign in there to either make up skills or have required minutes to be in a certain section of the choice board. And so these are only 6. I mean, I don't know how many tech tools we have in there. I was an English teacher, math's, tough. I think there's about 10 tools we showed in there. But the possibilities are really kind of infinite to what you can use for your choice boards. It's really kind of what you curtail and put into there. Stacie, anything else to include for quick tools?
No, the only thing I would add, I mean, like he said, I was a history teacher. So there's a lot of content specific tools that you guys know for your content area that are free game for this and very easily adapted into. Edpuzzle would be another one I would throw on here, because that is a quick reteach moment if students need it, but I would absolutely include Edpuzzle. And I always give the option for the students to bring me something they may know about that they want to use that I may not know about yet. So that open-ended option I always put out there with my choice boards too.
Oh yeah, Edpuzzle, it's a fun one. Oh, I gotta be back on the right screen. I know it's been a lot of me.
It is a lot of it's always all about you, Brian. Insert the dad joke.
Oh, there we go. So Stacie and I went back and forth. I'll talk about this one. All tech versus no tech. As instructional technology coaches, obviously we're all about technology, but we're also even more all about learning. So not everything needs tech, but we're going to tell you, it does make it a lot easier. And so using things within your choice boards, such as hyperlinking, Control K, Control K, Control K. It's honestly the best friend of any teacher and any remote teacher, especially, to hyperlink things directly into there, making those students go to where you'd like for them to go, while also maybe putting it right into the instructions. Hyperlinking is one of the best tools when it goes to using those. Adding text-rich elements, especially for students who might need those accommodations, such as alt text, or using things that are better contrast for their site to be able to catch the things they need to in there. And so if that is using bold italics or underlining, or changing the font size so that they can see it a little bit easier. Google Docs has had a great update over the last year where you can have that clickable checkbox right in there where they can check that off, or they can even highlight that entire box using the table. And you can house everything that you need in your LMS. I mean, you can put any of the things that they need to log into right into there, link it right to the choice board. They can click straight from there inside of the Google Docs, slide whatever you decide to use as your creator. Now, we don't have to say that there's no tech, but I'd be remiss to not include the other two. Using a pencil and paper, it's good for introducing. It doesn't allow for students to get lost in the technology and allows them to just focus on the learning. It can be a quick kind of thing. I know some people that use choice boards, they have them kind of in the front of their room where they can go pull it out real quick and say, here's your menu of options. It allows you to keep the tab count lower. I'm sure some of you have seen some of your students' Chromebooks, if their tabs aren't limited, they have 30, 40 tabs open. Whether they have anything on there is one thing, but it keeps the tab count from getting lost in the shuffle. And then not everybody has that reliable internet access, especially if you are at home, to be able to run something like a choice board regularly. And so that's absolutely something you can do. Or, why not both? It could be blended. You can use both those things. Just little things here and there. All right.
Okay, so here are some ready links on that you can use tomorrow. So we can kind of walk through some of these. This template is a slide deck template library that we have put together for some of our districts. These include slides, Jamboards, and some that are Kami. There's a lot of possibilities with choice boards, and you can go from, I have done them from 3 tasks that they're choosing from to just in a day, to choice boards that are worth 200 points that are a massive unit. So there's different ways to use these depending on your goals, and how you want to adapt these is going to depend on 1, your style as a teacher, and 2, what your ultimate learning goals are for students. As a history teacher, I use the content to teach the standards. That was my goal. So a lot of my choice boards, my columns were standards, and my rows were the content that I was using to get to those standards. So keep in mind that these are just ideas that can be adapted to meet your needs. The second link from Make and Take Choice Boards here is from Go Hello, which has a great template library in there and a choice board library. And the bottom line is, guys, we don't have time to reinvent the wheel. So use what's out there. If anything has really come over the last couple of years, is teachers collaborating and working together to help each other out. That pressure to think everything has to be created by you is going away. So all of these are absolutely made to be copied and adapted. The third one is from Engagecate. Did I say that? I always say that wrong. And these, again, are make and takes that are ready to go. These are a couple groups. They share make and takes every month. So these happen to be their choice boards. So a lot of teachers have collaborated and put their choice boards into that template. The Cold War one is mine that I used in the classroom. This is kind of the basic HyperDoc. And this, you'll see when you open it, there is a lot of activities within this. This was actually used when we were remote. So I gave them a movie option. And this was 2020 remote. So when we were all just figuring it out. But then I used all primary sources. So I always had a primary source option. I had an Edpuzzle option because I wanted them to at least get some content and to see that they were watching it. And then I had embedded the questions in it. And then we did Korean War and Vietnam because I wanted to make sure and hit that, because that was the point we weren't going to get through that year. And we knew we weren't coming back at this point. So this is a HyperDoc one. You can see I linked to Khan Academy, Docs Teach a lot. So these are all just hyperlinks that are going to take them to those assignments. These get a little messier because I also had it linked through my LMS as separate assignments. That way I could grade them, but then I always kept track of their points on this board. So they always knew where they were. We had a color coding system. This is a little bit more of the complicated, I think, than the regular ones. Can we go back to the slides? Thank you. Again, Slides Mania templates has them ready, and then those TPT templates that are always there. On these, if we go in, you really need to, and I know I keep saying this, but the backwards planning is on point here. You have to know your goal before you can make the choice board. Is your goal to assess content? Is your goal to have students have the ability to be retaught? So that's got to be your starting point. And these are sorted, as you can see, there's math and science, which you're stuck with ELA and social studies. So these may be good to look at. I can kind of wrap my head around science. I believe there's a lot you could do with math, but I personally have not done that. I leave that to my spreadsheets to do my math for me. There's treasure hunts. There are, honestly, escape rooms can be used as choice boards because they're using different things. So there is a lot of content here that you can figure out what you want and make the choice board adapt to that. The Teacher Pay Teachers choice board, I believe, is just another free digital resource to download a template there for interactive Google Slides. So correct me if I'm wrong, Brian, but to me, kind of the hyperlink is the really big piece of the choice board puzzle to get students to resources, but also to give them the choice of what they want their outcome to be.
Absolutely. One of the biggest things that with the slide media templates, Slides Carnival, Slides Go, all the templates is that they're allowed to be used and they're allowed to be used freely. I mean, obviously there's some people that can support them and get subscriptions, but you can edit those themes when you get into there and especially change around some of the things that you'd like. And that's by going kind of into your Google Slides, if you're in there, and be able to move those immovable stuff around so that those boxes stay in place, especially for those youngers, you know, might drag and bring things all over the place, especially when they're clicking. So all great, all kind of great and engaging things for keeping students focused.
And one of the things, I mean, no matter how many free resources we have on here, the free resources are great, but the protocols and the expectations are going to have to be set by you in your classroom. That's not something that comes classroom ready. So there was a little bit of upfront teaching to get my students ready for this because it was really out of their comfort zone to not just be told what to do, to have that critical thinking skill to decide what they're going to do and analyze it and figure it out. So those procedures and expectations really have to be set up by you in the classroom. And one way I did do that was I used that free space to make that a mandatory instructional video through Edpuzzle that they all actually had to watch. And that was the one required piece of their choice board that they had to do. Okay, want to learn more? You'll see some common themes. These are some great ed tech websites and some just educational websites that have jumped on the choice board bandwagon. Ditch That Textbook just came out with this progressive choice boards post a month or two ago. And this is a really cool take on choice boards. It's very different because they have to complete it in levels. So you start where we talk about you have that easy square. This forces them, you can do an easy square here at your base, but then you're going to go up a level to a more complicated square and then a more complicated until you get to that top tier of learning. So this kind of forces them into that Bloom's idea of we start at the basic level and then we're going to build. I can see this as a progressing through a unit. You know, we're going to start with the basics. Here's the vocabulary. Here are the basic dates and times you need to know, or maybe in literature, it's a review of the plot pyramid. And then as we go up, those ideas become more complex. Example, this one has a flip grid videos, which I love, that are always fun. Google Drawings. I did always give, and like he said, we went back and forth on the tech aspect of this. Mine were very technology driven, but I did give my students who were more hands-on always an option to do things on paper and then just turn the pictures of those in when we were remote. I liked having everything in my LMS to be organized. Even before all of this, it was a requirement in my class because it kept them organized as well as myself. Okay, Choice Boards 101. This one is just going to give you some background, some design tips, how to differentiate these. One thing I think that we skip over a lot with differentiation and technology, and choice boards lend itself perfectly to this. Once you create this, especially in Google Classroom, and you create the copy for each student, those student copies are now in your drive individually where you can go in and tweak them for each kid. Maybe you have a student who needs the recorded directions instead of just the written out directions. You can record and embed that video into that student's choice board. Maybe we talked about increasing the font size or having more audio options. Maybe you have a student who has a major writing deficit and you want most of their answers to come through to you verbally. So maybe take that choice board and put it in Kami so they can do things verbally instead of written. There are a lot of options with differentiation in this. Limiting the number of choices a student has. The cool thing about it is once you do that, it's just individually to that student and nobody else has to know. You're not openly providing these to the entire class. You can just differentiate it and bring it down for that one student to know. And as far as they're concerned, everybody has the same assignment. Okay. Edpuzzle and choice boards. This is just actually by Edpuzzle. It is them just telling you different ways that you can use Edpuzzle and choice boards. I will say the one thing I will caution here is I would watch with SOPA with Edpuzzle. Edpuzzle is a great tool for teachers right now with their SOPAs. We need to be careful with students using it because their content is not protected and it is very public. So I would shy away from having students actually make Edpuzzles until you check with your SOPA agreements on that and how you're doing with that. So, but Edpuzzles are a great way to show accountability. If you want to know that they watched the video for sure, Edpuzzle is going to tell you that. Okay, then 6 ideas to infuse choice into math. We did get some math in here. This is also from Ditch That Textbook. Ditch That Textbook. You can tell I'm a major fan of their work. This is just different ideas on how to incorporate choice boards into math. Math is admittedly, I'm assuming, much more difficult to be able to put this kind of choice in, but I do like the idea of the show me, tell me, digitize, use paper math. Get them thinking about those math problems in different ways that form much more solid, concrete connections through the math curriculum. Oh, choose your own math adventures. That looks kind of cool. All right. Create choice boards that meet every student's need. This is back to that differentiation. So it's going to talk about, you can level choice boards down to kindergarten level. You can level choice boards to beyond high school level. So you can really take this and adapt it to whatever need and subject area and content or standard you are working on. Novels, they're great for novels. They are great for teaching. If you want to do an entire choice board on a standard, you can do that. There's endless ways these can be adapted. I think that's why I like them so much. You just really have to look at what your end goal is and what your learning goal is and backwards plan from there. How do you want your students to show you what's acceptable to you and what's not? And then build the choice board around that idea. Okay, engaging and empowering. Right now, I think especially students are burnt out. Students are burnt out with the same old, same old. By giving them the choice on how they're going to learn, especially your older students, it engages them in the curriculum in a totally different way. I think where my big selling point as a teacher came was I had a class one year where it was a co-taught class, National Honor Society, and the self-contained special ed, because they did not offer it that year, were in one class. I had a lot of CTE students that were my construction auto kids also in that class. So by giving them choice on how to demonstrate their learning and how they wanted to learn with those vastly different learning styles, I was getting the same kind of outcomes from all of them being able to build on their strengths. My construction kids were building me models, but researching what to back up why they created that model and what the not demographics, but the scale was. So they were using math skills and social studies. So a lot of this, I think the more students can engage and have ownership in what they're doing, the more they're going to enjoy it and the more they're going to buy in to that learning. All right.
There we go. Well said, Stacie. So we'll keep on trudging on. Oh, I forgot. I forgot we
That's
had
it.
gotten the end of there. Any of our links or research uses linked into there. But if anybody has any questions, toss them in the chat for us. We'd love to hear them. If you have any questions, if you do have any questions after this, feel free to reach out to us via email, and we will be glad to be able to answer those for you. So if you do have any questions at this time, please let us know. You can join us on video. I think Matt's opening up video for us at this time. Otherwise,
Yeah, William, I absolutely agree. Jamboards work very well with choice boards. They are, especially with that collaborative experience, Jamboard and Padlet, I would absolutely use in my choice boards.
but yeah, if you guys have any questions, feel free to toss them in. We'll be here for a while. I think there's a couple of Q&As in there. All right, Ashley, once they produce the things, do you have a plan for assessing these? Stacie, go ahead and take that one.
Yeah, I always, if it was a thing they were creating that I had put in the choice board, I already had rubrics created for those. So they were available within the choice board that by hyperlink, they could see the rubric and how I would assess that. If they were something that they proposed to me that they wanted to make that I did not have included in the choice board, we would sit down and make the rubric together. So that kind of was part of that dialogue of, okay, why do you want to make this? What do you think it's going to show? What are your goals? And then we would kind of collaborate on what their goal for their project was and then what my goal for their project was. And we would create a rubric together. It was actually one of some of my favorite conversations I had with my kids.
And then Ashley also said complimentary rubrics.
On the creative things, I would have a rubric for each. My most of my choice boards that I used in the classroom were a create, or you had to earn a certain amount of points. But then the tasks within the choice board were worth different amounts of points based on the level of difficulty. So if they were creating something, one pagers, I always had a one pager option in my choice boards. They loved them. We had a standing rubric in my class that was always used for choice boards. I just leveled it down in points. So instead of being worth 100, which it would have been on its own for a big project, I just kind of changed my points so it was worth 20. The ed puzzles graded themselves. They were generally worth 5 to 10, depending on how long they are. My primary source analysis, we had a standing rubrics that we used for each standard that throughout the year. So they had a rubric library in my class for those kinds of projects because we did them in different aspects all year. So they always had access to those rubrics.
I do want to thank you guys for being here, by the way. Like, it's not an easy thing, coming straight after school to go to a webinar, not the most thrilling thing. So I do want to thank you guys for anybody heads out for joining us.
Yep. Well, and Ashley said that the assessing part seems more challenging. I will say at first, until you get your head wrapped around it, it is a little bit more challenging because we're not programmed to assess students on their choices. We're programmed to assess students on our choices. So changing that mindset is honestly the hardest part of this. But once you get going and you get in a rhythm, it actually was a lot faster for me to grade and assess choice boards than tests. I mean, and I think the most enjoyable part of that was I wasn't grading 100 of the same thing. Every student was demonstrating their learning, but I may have 4 one-pagers and 5 models and 10 videos. So I wasn't bored, I think. And my grading was better because my mind wasn't wandering. So it is challenging at the beginning, but it does once you get in your groove, I think it's kind of time saving and easier. And always embed those rubrics in Google Classroom to make it even faster. Just click away.
So at this time, thank you all very much for attending today. And I would like to thank Stacie and Brian for sharing their expertise today, and also for sharing those upcoming LTC webinars. We do have one coming up. We had to make a little change to our normal schedule. Next week's webinar will be on Monday at 3:30. We'll be discussing some tech tools to support executive functioning while learning online. That is always a challenge when we're working with remote students. Well, anytime that we bring technology and gadgets and whatnot into our classroom. So that'll be a good one. I'm excited for that one. For those of you who are attending live, once again, PD credit will be available for you. You'll need to complete the evaluation that will be sent out within 24 to 48 hours of the close of today's activities. We will also be posting this recording and some of the associated links on YouTube within 24 to 48 hours as well. Have a look at ltcillinois.org/events/webinars for future webinar offerings. Again, thanks to everyone who has attended, and thanks Stacie and Brian for your expertise today.
Thank you.